what if the secret to out-earning everyone else in your industry wasn't, a magic formula or a revolutionary new app or some silver bullet, but something you already know how to do, yet actively avoid every single day?
Oh, that is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Right. I mean, think about that for a second. We are constantly sold this idea that massive success requires some hidden knowledge, like a life hack or a secret morning routine.
Yeah, the ice baths at 4 a.m.
Exactly. But what if the barrier between you and the top tier of your profession isn't a lack of information at all, but just a desperate biological avoidance of the obvious?
It's totally the ultimate paradox of human behavior. I mean, we
Yeah.
spend an extraordinary amount of time and energy and capital searching for a shortcut.
Always looking for the detour.
Right, a detour around the mountain.
Yeah.
And we completely step over the actual paved path to success simply because that path looks like hard work. We're allergic to the mundane.
We really are. We want effortless success. We want the prestige and the revenue without the grind.
Yeah.
But today, for everyone watching on YouTube or listening in, we are going deep into the brutal, unavoidable reality of hard work in business.
It's a fun one.
It is. We're doing a deep dive into the foundational arguments of Chapter 1 from Jeb Blount's acclaimed book, Fanatical Prospecting. Specifically, the chapter titled, The Case for Prospecting.
Such a great starting point.
So over the course of this conversation, you are about to learn the brutally simple but profoundly difficult truth about why a tiny fraction of people completely dominate sales, business, and entrepreneurship.
And why taking radical, almost uncomfortable personal responsibility is literally the only true shortcut to filling your pipeline and thriving no matter what the market is doing.
Yes. So it is a phenomenal text to explore because it strips away all the corporate jargon.
Oh, completely. It gets right down to the psychology of human nature. Because, the principles outlined in this chapter are ostensibly about sales, but
They apply universally.
exactly, they apply universally. They apply to anyone trying to build a startup or launch a freelance career, secure funding, or just achieve any high-level professional goal where you have to convince another human being to part with their time or money.
Right. So let's start with the anomaly that the book brings up right at the beginning. It's a statistic we hear thrown around a lot, the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
But the text frames it in a way that really forces you to stop and think.
Yeah, the Pareto principle.
Right. In almost every competitive organization, the top 20% of the people produce 80% of the results.
Yep.
They take home the lion's share of the commissions, the massive bonuses, the incentive trips to the Caribbean.
Like it all hardware.
They win the prizes, they get the industry recognition. And when we look at that top 20%, the immediate, almost defensive assumption most of us make is, well, they must be geniuses.
Right. They must have some secret we don't.
We assume they went to better schools, or they have higher IQs, deeper networks, or they just possess some innate natural-born charisma that the rest of us completely lack.
Which is a very comforting lie we tell ourselves.
So comforting.
Because when you actually look at the data, and when you study these individuals, these superstars, as the text refers to them, you find that they are not intrinsically smarter.
Right.
No, they don't possess some magical hypnotic charm. And they certainly aren't always better educated than the mediocre majority making up the bottom 80%.
That's wild to think about.
The foundation of their massive, disproportionate success comes down to a concept the author calls the paradox of basics.
Okay, I want to stop right there because the paradox of basics sounds like an oxymoron.
It does.
I mean, if something is basic, it shouldn't be a paradox. It should just be obvious.
It should be obvious, and that is precisely why it's a paradox. The core truth behind the success of these superstars is so blatantly obvious and so painfully simple that it has become completely invisible to the modern professional.
And what is that truth?
That truth is fanatical prospecting. That is the entire secret. They just consistently, relentlessly, and unapologetically initiate conversations with potential customers day in and day out, regardless of how they feel.
Okay, let's unpack this because the secret is really just talk to more people. Why is the business world so obsessed with complexity?
Oh, it's a massive industry.
Right. Look at chief sales officers. Look at Fortune 500 executives. They're constantly chasing the flavor of the day fads. They're rolling out new software, new methodologies, new synergistic alignment protocol.
All the buzzwords.
Exactly. If the answer is just enforcing the basics, why are we spending billions of dollars ignoring them?
We ignore them because the basics are incredibly unglamorous and they cannot be bought. Let's look at the psychology of corporate behavior here. Corporations spend literal billions of dollars every single year on complex human resources assessments.
Oh, yeah.
They buy predictive behavioral indexes. They fund endless academic research. They bring in armies of highly paid consultants to find the holy grail of sales success.
Like some secret psychological profile.
Exactly, like a Myers-Briggs combination that just guarantees a top performer. And they fail. They fail constantly and spectacularly.
But why do they fail?
Mm.
I mean, if you have unlimited resources to study human performance, shouldn't you eventually find a formula?
You'd think so, but they fail because they are looking for a complex answer to a simple problem. They're trying to find a technological or psychological substitute for sheer human effort.
Wow.
Psychologically, this is a massive ego defense mechanism on a corporate scale. Managers and executives desperately want success to be a matter of hidden talent or a deeply complex mathematical formula.
Why, though?
Because if success requires a magical algorithm or a proprietary software suite or a genetic predisposition, then a lack of success isn't the manager's fault. It's not the employee's fault. It's just that they haven't found the right tool yet.
Oh, man, that makes a lot of sense. So if I'm a manager and my team is missing quota, it's much easier for me to tell my boss, hey, we need a $500,000 upgrade to our CRM system.
Oh, absolutely.
Rather than saying, I am failing to hold my team accountable to making 50 phone calls a day, one makes me look like a strategic thinker, right? And the other makes me look like a weak leader.
Precisely. It completely abdicates responsibility. But if we accept the reality that the primary difference between the superstar and the mediocre performer is simply who is willing to do the boring, hard, emotionally draining, repetitive work of prospecting every single day.
Then we're on the hook.
Exactly. Then we have absolutely no one to blame but ourselves, and human beings will spend an infinite amount of money to avoid blaming themselves.
That is a harsh reality to face. As I was reading the source material, the author's direct comparison to the fitness industry struck me as just the perfect way to visualize this delusion.
It's spot on.
Think about the billions of dollars spent every year on weight loss pills, or vibrating abdominal belts, absurd detox teas, and 30-day miracle programs.
Yep.
People buy these things in droves because they want ripped abs effortlessly. They want the result without the process.
And yet, does anyone actually believe, deep down, that a detox tea is the secret to human health?
No, of course not. Everyone, literally every single adult on the planet, intuitively knows that eating a balanced diet in a caloric deficit and exercising regularly are the real, undeniable answers to weight loss.
Right. Diet and exercise are the basics. They are the undeniable laws of human thermodynamics.
But we still run to the supplement aisle because buying a pill takes 10 seconds. The pill doesn't require us to wake up at 5 in the morning, lace up our shoes, and go for a run in the freezing rain while our lungs burn. We want the easy button.
The corporate world operates on the exact same delusion. Buying the latest artificial intelligence lead generation software or hiring a social selling guru to revamp your LinkedIn profile is the business equivalent of buying a weight loss bell.
That is such a good analogy.
You are looking for an external mechanism to do the heavy emotional lifting for you. You want a machine to face the rejection so you don't have to.
But the superstar doesn't do that.
No, the superstar doesn't look for a pill. The superstar wakes up, puts on their shoes, and runs. They prospect. They interrupt people's days. They introduce themselves, knowing full well they might be told to go away.
So if you are listening to this right now and you are frustrated with your income or the growth of your business, the immediate practical takeaway is to stop looking for a complex organizational fix.
Stop researching shiny new software tools to solve your revenue problems.
Audit your own daily habits. Look at your calendar for the last 5 days. Are you actually doing the unglamorous work?
Ask yourself that honestly.
Because if your pipeline is empty, it is not because you lack the right app, it's not because your branding is slightly off in its color palette, and it's not because you haven't found the perfect email template. It is simply because you are not talking to enough human beings.
It is a sobering audit to perform, and once we strip away the excuses and accept that relentless execution of the basics is the only answer, we have to transition into understanding what that actually looks like in practice.
Right, because knowing you need to make calls and actually making them are two very different things.
Very different. Executing the basics requires a specific, highly cultivated, and frankly rare psychological shift.
Which perfectly bridges into the next major concept the text explores. Once we know the what, we have to look at the how. How do these top performers operate on a Tuesday morning when it's raining and they are tired?
Yeah.
The text introduces the concept of the fanatical mindset and specifically the one more call mantra. I want to drill down into the word fanatical because the book uses it very deliberately. It doesn't just mean enthusiastic. The definition provided is motivated or characterized by an extreme, uncritical enthusiasm.
Uncritical enthusiasm is the operational phrase there.
It really is. It implies a suspension of overthinking.
Yeah.
The average person is highly critical of their own enthusiasm. They second-guess every single action.
Constantly.
But the superstar views prospecting not just as a task to be checked off a to-do list between 9:00 a.m. and 10:00 a.m., but as a total comprehensive way of life. They are essentially always on.
And when we analyze the cognitive behavioral traits of this fanatical prospector, their internal monologue is radically different from the average professional. The average person uses conditional logic to find reasons not to prospect. They negotiate with themselves.
Give me an example of that. What do you mean by conditional logic? How does the average person negotiate themselves out of doing the work?
Oh, it happens dozens of times a day in every office in the world. The average rep looks at the clock and says, well, it's 8:30 a.m. People are probably just getting into the office and checking their email. I shouldn't bother them yet.
Oh, I've done that.
We all have. Then at 11:45 a.m., it's, oh, they're probably heading to lunch. I'll wait. At 4 p.m., it's, they're wrapping up their day. I don't want to be an annoyance.
Right.
They use the time of day, the weather, the day of the week, or the fact that they feel a little tired as a valid, logical condition to delay the work. I'll catch up on my calls tomorrow when conditions are perfect.
And tomorrow never comes, because tomorrow brings a whole new set of logical conditions. Now it's Wednesday. People are deep in midweek meetings. It's an endless cycle of perfectly rationalized failure.
Yes. The fanatical prospector abandons that logic entirely. They operate with uncritical enthusiasm. They don't whine that the leads generated by marketing are weak. They don't care if it's lunchtime. They pick up the phone or they walk into the business and they initiate contact.
But doesn't that make them oblivious? I mean, shouldn't you be strategic about when you call people? Like, there are definitely bad times to call.
Well, strategy is often a masquerade for procrastination. Yes, there are optimal times to reach certain demographics, but the fanatical prospector knows that a suboptimal call made today is infinitely more valuable than a perfect call delayed until tomorrow.
Ah, I see.
The sheer volume of their activity overrides the need for perfect timing.
That volume aspect is fascinating, especially when the text discusses how these individuals behave relative to economic cycles. Because human nature dictates when things are going great. We relax.
Naturally, yeah.
If I just close 3 massive deals this month, my natural inclination is to take my foot off the gas, go play golf, and just coast for a bit.
Which is the exact trap the mediocre majority falls into. But the fanatical prospectors prospect aggressively in good times, when they are closing deals left and right, when their confidence is super high because they understand the cyclical nature of business.
And they know it's not going to last forever.
Right. They know a rainy day is eventually coming, a client will churn, a contract will fall through, the economy will dip. By prospecting when they don't need to, they build an impenetrable buffer against future disaster.
And what about during the bad times, like when the economy is in a recession and nobody seems to be buying?
They prospect just as aggressively, if not more so, because they know it's the absolute key to their survival. When the market contracts, the average salesperson panics, freezes, and spends their time doom-scrolling financial news.
Just refreshing the news over and over.
Exactly. The fanatical prospector simply increases their input to match the lowered conversion rate. This relentless, unchanging consistency is the mechanism that actually neutralizes their fear.
Okay, let's dig into that mechanism. Because how does making more calls, and therefore exposing yourself to more rejection, actually neutralize fear? Logically, you would think more rejection leads to more anxiety.
It comes down to scarcity versus abundance. Fear in sales or in any business outreach almost always stems from a scarcity mindset.
Okay.
Imagine you are an entrepreneur and you only have 3 viable prospects in your entire pipeline. Your rent is due, payroll is coming up, and you desperately need a deal. Calling one of those 3 prospects is a terrifying experience.
Right, your heart is pounding, your palms are sweating.
Why? Because the stakes are artificially high. If that one person says no, you lose 33% of your potential survival. You project desperation onto the call, the prospect senses it, and they back away.
It's the smell of commission breath.
Exactly.
People can sense when you need them more than they need you.
Precisely.
Right.
But contrast that with the fanatical prospector, because they never stop. They don't have 3 prospects in their pipeline. They have 300.
Wow. Okay.
If they call a prospect and the person is rude or hangs up or says absolutely not, it doesn't matter, the psychological impact is practically zero because they have 299 other opportunities lined up.
That makes total sense.
The sheer volume of their activity dilutes the sting of any individual rejection. They become desensitized to hearing no because they've normalized the behavior of asking. They operate from a position of absolute abundance.
That is a profound shift in perspective. It completely removes the weight from any single interaction.
Mm,
If you have abundance, you can actually focus on helping the person on the phone instead of begging them to save your month.
exactly.
And the source text gives these great, concrete, real-world examples of what this integrated lifestyle looks like. It's not just sitting at a desk with a headset on in a dark cubicle. It is the person who views the entire world as an opportunity.
Yeah, the always-on mentality.
They carry business cards literally everywhere they go. They strike up a genuine conversation with a stranger in an elevator. They talk to the person sitting next to them in the doctor's office waiting room, or the person standing in line behind them at the coffee shop.
They recognize that opportunity is ubiquitous. It is not confined to the artificial boundaries of 9 to 5 office hours. They understand that a CEO buys coffee just like anyone else. A decision maker gets their teeth cleaned just like anyone else.
Wait, so you're saying they don't even view this as a job? They are literally treating a trip to the dentist as a networking event. Doesn't that sound exhausting?
Well, it sounds exhausting to someone who views prospecting as a painful chore, but remember the definition: uncritical enthusiasm. To the fanatical prospector, it's not a chore, it's a game.
A game.
Yeah, it's an innate curiosity about other people. They aren't pitching the person in the dentist's office with hard clothes. They're simply initiating a conversation, asking what they do and dropping a seed. It becomes second nature.
And the ultimate daily expression of this lifestyle is a mantra the author highlights heavily. One more call. I want to focus on this because it's such a specific, actionable rule. At the end of the day, before they pack up their bag, before they turn off their computer monitor, before they mentally check out and head to their car, they force themselves to make one more call.
That one more call rule is a brilliant behavioral hack. It forces you to push past your natural physiological and psychological stopping point.
It's like runner's high.
It is the exact same concept as a runner pushing through the pain when they hit the wall in a marathon. When you are mentally depleted and all you want to do is go home, forcing your brain to initiate one more high-stakes conversation builds immense mental endurance.
It's like weightlifting for your willpower.
Yes, exactly. And look at the compound interest of that habit. If you make just one extra call every single workday for a year, that is over 250 additional conversations you have initiated strictly off the margin of your own fatigue.
That's a lot of extra chances.
Right. And in many industries, 250 conversations yields a dozen qualified appointments, which yields 2 or 3 major closed deals. That single habit, executed when you least want to do it, can literally be the mathematical difference between missing a quota and blowing it completely out of the water.
So for you listening, how do you actually apply this today? First, treat every public interaction as a potential connection. Stop compartmentalizing your networking into specific events or hours. You don't need to be at an industry mixer wearing a name tag to find a client.
No, you don't.
And second, adopt the one more call rule today. Before you end your workday, before you close your laptop, make one more connection. Send one more targeted email. Make one more dial. It completely eliminates the excuse of waiting for the perfect time, and it proves to yourself that you are in control of your actions, not your fatigue.
It builds a tremendous amount of self-trust. But of course, if extreme enthusiasm and constant activity are the mechanisms that guarantee a full pipeline and a high income, we have to examine the inverse.
The dark side.
Right. What happens when you lack that discipline? What is the actual fallout of skipping those basics for a week or a month? This brings us to the dark side of the equation.
Which is what the author refers to as the empty pipe, the true root cause of failure.
The author lays out a brutal, undeniable fact that is the centerpiece of this entire philosophy. The #1 reason for failure in sales, entrepreneurship, and business growth is an empty pipe.
And the cause of that.
The singular root cause of an empty pipe is the failure to prospect. That is it. The text is unambiguous about this. Failure is never a deficit of talent. It is never a poor territory. It is never a terrible manager, an inferior product, or a lack of presentation skills.
Okay, stop. I have to push back hard on this. This sounds fantastic in a motivational book. It's a great soundbite. But let's be real for a second and apply this to the real world.
Okay, let's do it.
If I am a salesperson selling snow shovels, and my company assigns me the territory of Miami, Florida territory absolutely matters. How can the author realistically claim that external factors don't cause failure? If my product is twice the price of the competitors and breaks half the time, that's not my fault. How is that an empty pipe issue?
It is the ultimate test of the internal versus external locus of control. Let's take your Miami snow shovel example, absurd as it is, because it perfectly highlights the psychology of deflection.
Okay.
If you are assigned Miami to sell snow shovels, yes, you have a mathematically terrible territory. Your job is infinitely harder than the person assigned to Boston. But if your pipeline is at absolute zero, whose fault is that?
I mean,
Did you call the ice skating rinks? Did you call the industrial deep freeze storage facilities? Did you call the landscaping companies that might use them for moving heavy gravel?
I see where you're going with this.
If your pipeline is empty, it means you stopped looking. You looked at the territory, decided it was unfair, and you stopped making calls. The territory didn't empty your pipeline. Your reaction to the territory emptied your pipeline.
Wow.
A terrible manager doesn't physically prevent you from picking up the phone. An overpriced product doesn't stop you from sending an email. Those external factors dictate your conversion rate. They might mean you have to make 100 calls to get one yes instead of 10 calls. But the fact that the pipe is completely empty is 100% a reflection of your failure to execute the activity.
Wow. That is a radically different way of viewing the world. It means taking absolute, unapologetic ownership of your reality. But why is it so natural for us to blame the territory or the manager?
Because when a professional is failing, their ego is under severe threat. The human brain is designed to protect the ego from trauma. If you admit that you are failing because you are simply too afraid or too lazy to pick up the phone, the cognitive dissonance is incredibly painful.
Right. It hurts to admit that.
To protect you from that pain, the brain immediately looks for external scapegoats. You blame the macroeconomic environment, you blame the Federal Reserve for raising interest rates, you complain that the commission structure is unfair, or that the marketing department isn't generating enough warm inbound leads.
It reminds me of the classic movie Glengarry Glen Ross. The leads are weak.
Yes.
It's never the salesman's fault. It's always the leads.
Always. Blaming these external factors provides a comfortable, warm blanket of distraction. It protects you from having to look in the mirror and acknowledge your own inaction. But the reality of business, and frankly the reality of life, is that there are only three things you can truly control: your actions, your reactions, and your mindset.
That's it.
Everything else, the economy, your manager's mood, the competitor's new product launch, a global pandemic, is an uncontrollable variable. If you focus your emotional energy on uncontrollable variables, you become a victim. If your pipeline is empty, it means your actions are misaligned with your goals. You simply aren't prospecting.
So let's talk about the people who thrive on being victims. The text paints this incredibly vivid, almost uncomfortable picture of what it calls the whiners at the coffee machine.
Oh, we all know them.
If you've ever worked in an office, you know exactly who these people are. They're huddled together in the break room, sipping lukewarm coffee, dissecting and validating all the reasons why no one is buying today. They create an echo chamber of excuses. Oh, it's Tuesday. People never sign contracts on Tuesdays.
Oh, the news cycle is crazy today. Everyone is distracted.
Did you see what the competition just released? We're doomed.
It is essentially a support group for mediocrity. They huddle together to validate each other's excuses so none of them have to feel guilty about walking back to their desks and not making calls. Misery loves company, but more importantly, mediocrity demands company.
Because if someone else is succeeding.
Exactly. If someone else in the office is succeeding, it destroys their excuse that the market is bad.
Exactly. And meanwhile, while that support group is meeting in the break room, what is the superstar doing? The superstar is back at their desk. Now, to be fair, they aren't immune to those market conditions, right? The interest rates affect them too. The competitor's product affects them too.
Of course. But their reaction is entirely different. They don't engage in the break room debate because it doesn't serve them. They are generating their own luck through sheer determination and volume. They understand the mathematics of success.
The math doesn't lie.
If the economy dips and their historical close rate drops from 20% to 10%, they don't cry about the lost 10%. They calculate that they simply need to double their prospecting volume to maintain the exact same income. They control the input.
They control the input, and the input generates the luck. It's the old saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You stumble into the right conversation with the right decision maker at exactly the right time, not by some cosmic stroke of magic, but purely through the statistical probability generated by making hundreds of touches.
If you flip a coin enough times, eventually it lands on heads.
Exactly.
That is the mathematics of prospecting. The takeaway for the listener is the concept of radical ownership. This requires constant vigilance. Whenever you find yourself blaming an external factor for a lack of sales, a stalled project, or a lack of business growth, you have to catch yourself in real time.
You have to interrupt the thought?
You have to recognize that defensive ego reaction, and then you redirect that exact amount of energy, the mental energy you were just about to spend whining to a coworker or composing a complaining email, into initiating one new conversation. You pivot instantly from complaint to contact.
Pivot from complaint to contact. That is powerful.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, taking radical ownership sounds incredibly empowering when we are dissecting it theoretically on a deep dive.
Sure.
It's easy to nod along while you're listening to this on your commute or at the gym. But why is it so incredibly hard to execute on a cold, rainy Tuesday morning when you've already been rejected 5 times? If we know the math works, why do our brains fight it so aggressively?
This brings us to the final and perhaps most crucial concept of the chapter. We fight it because we are biologically, historically, and culturally wired to look for the easy button.
The easy button.
We are fighting millions of years of human evolution that tells us to conserve energy and avoid social ostracization.
The easy button delusion. The text dismantles this brilliantly. The author quotes Joe DeSena, the founder of the Spartan race, a guy who knows a thing or two about voluntary suffering.
Oh, yeah, he does.
DeSena says, easy is the greatest marketing hook of all time. And when you look at our modern economy, everything is sold on the promise of easy.
The entire consumer landscape is built on the promise of bypassing effort. People want to flip real estate with zero money down and zero physical labor. They want to get rich trading cryptocurrencies from their couch with zero sacrifice.
They want the hacks.
They want the hacks, the cheat codes, the bypasses. We've been conditioned to believe that if something is hard, we must be doing it wrong. But the author states a very clear, very harsh truth about sales and entrepreneurship. You are owed nothing.
You are owed nothing. It is a harsh truth, and it leads to a very honest admission in the text about what this work actually feels like. Because let's look at why prospecting actually sucks.
It does suck.
It is not just boring, it is physically and emotionally draining. It is incredibly rejection dense. When you prospect, you are actively interrupting people who do not want to be interrupted. You are asking for their time, which is their most valuable asset, and a large percentage of them are going to tell you no.
And not always politely either.
No. Sometimes politely, sometimes very rudely. They will hang up on you. They'll tell you never to contact them again.
Which triggers a very real physiological response. To the primitive parts of our brain, social rejection is interpreted as a threat to survival. In a tribal setting, being rejected by the group meant death. When a prospect hangs up on you, your brain releases stress hormones. It literally hurts.
Which is why I found the author's personal admission so incredibly refreshing. Jeb Blount is a multi-millionaire sales expert. He wrote the definitive book on the subject. He consults for massive corporations. And yet, he openly admits in the text that prospecting is still the hardest, most mentally exhausting, least enjoyable part of his day.
He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't sell you a false reality where, after 20 years of practice, picking up the phone suddenly becomes this joyous, magical, euphoric experience. He admits there is always something more fun, more comfortable, and less threatening he would rather be doing.
The only difference between him and the failing salesperson is that he gets over it and does it anyway. He embraces the reality of the pain. He doesn't wait for the fear to disappear. He acts in spite of it.
Exactly. He accepts that the emotional drain is the permanent cost of admission to the top 20%.
And the imagery the book uses to drive this home is just incredible. There are 2 specific concepts from the text that I think will stick with me and hopefully the listener forever. The first is a quote from the legendary business philosopher Jeb Blount. He said, "Don't wish that things were easier. You should wish that you were better."
It is a profound shift in perspective. Wishing things were easier is a passive, victim-oriented stance. It relies on the world changing to accommodate your weakness. Wishing you were better is an active, aggressive stance. It shifts the burden of improvement completely onto your own shoulders. It demands growth.
Yes. Write that on a sticky note and put it on your monitor. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better.
I love that.
And the second concept is this hilarious but deeply painful analogy about the insidious nature of settling for average. The text says, mediocrity is like a broke uncle. Once he moves into your house, it is nearly impossible to get him to leave.
It is a phenomenal visual because it perfectly captures how failure actually happens. Failure is rarely a massive, catastrophic explosion. It is usually a slow, quiet slide into comfort.
The broke uncle.
Yeah, mediocrity, the broke uncle, is very comfortable at first. He doesn't demand much. He sits on the couch. He tells you it's okay that you didn't make your calls today. He justifies your excuses. But slowly, day by day, he eats your food, he drains your potential, he depletes your resources, until one day you wake up and you realize you are trapped. You have normalized failure.
The book pulls absolutely no punches when describing how averse we are to avoiding that discomfort. It literally says that if given the choice between making cold calls and swimming with sharks, most salespeople would choose the sharks.
That's how terrified we are.
We are that terrified of the emotional pain of rejection. But the text draws a stark, undeniable contrast in the lifestyles that result from these two paths. You can choose the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. It's the difference between driving a 10-year-old Hyundai versus a brand-new Mercedes. It's the difference between eating cheap ramen noodles in a cramped apartment versus ordering a prime cowboy ribeye at a 5-star restaurant. It's watching a hand-me-down television versus a 60-inch ultra-high-def screen. As the book bluntly puts it, great salespeople are skipping meals and doing deals. They are paying the toll.
And that toll is paid entirely in emotional labor. The practical takeaway here is vital, and it requires a complete paradigm shift. Stop trying to find a way to make prospecting fun. Stop looking for a secret script that will make it rejection-proof.
It doesn't exist.
There is no script, no email template, and no software that will make everyone love you and say yes. Acknowledge that the work is going to suck. Accept the emotional drain, the anxiety, and the rejection as the literal toll you have to pay to travel on the road to a high income. Once you accept that it is inherently hard, you stop wasting precious mental energy wishing it were easy, and you just get to work.
Let's tie all of this together. We have covered a massive amount of psychological ground today, from dismantling the paradox of basics, to the uncritical enthusiasm of a fanatical mindset, to the delusion of the easy button and the insidious comfort of the broke uncle of mediocrity.
If we synthesize all these core concepts, the absolute soul of this chapter, the undeniable truth at the bottom of it all, is the realization that massive success is not a secret methodology. It is not an app, it is not a script, and it is not a territory. Success is a supreme act of willpower.
Willpower.
The gap between the mediocre majority struggling to pay bills and the elite superstars dominating their industries is not talent, and it is not intelligence. It is simply the willingness to abandon the fantasy of effortless success. It is the relentless daily execution of the uncomfortable, boring, grueling basics, regardless of how you feel.
Because being well-informed in business means absolutely nothing if you don't translate that knowledge into forward motion. You can read every sales book in the world. You can memorize every closing technique. You can listen to 100 deep dives on strategy, but nothing happens in the economy until someone sells something.
Right.
And no one sells anything without first interrupting someone's day, risking rejection, and initiating a conversation.
And that requires facing the fear of rejection head on, day after day. Which leads me to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this analysis.
Let's hear it.
If we accept everything we've discussed, if the pain of rejection is the absolute, unavoidable prerequisite for a superstar income, then perhaps we need to fundamentally rewire how we perceive the word no. We need to stop viewing a no as a failure or a personal attack. We need to start viewing a no as the literal currency that buys your success. Every rejection is a coin you deposit into the toll booth on the road to your goals. So how would your day change? How would your anxiety level completely evaporate if tomorrow morning you woke up and actively tried to get rejected 10 times before lunch?
Oh, wow. That completely flips the script on fear. If your goal is to collect no's, then a rejection becomes a victory. You're gamifying the worst, most painful part of the job.
Exactly.
But once you've embraced this grueling truth, once you've accepted that the muddy waters of the business world are cleared up only by extreme action, how exactly do you forge the mental armor required to survive that level of rejection day in and day out without burning out? Well, we are going to explore the 7 specific psychological mindsets of these unstoppable prospectors in our next deep dive. See you there. So think about that physical feeling in your stomach right before you make a cold call.
Oh yeah, that drop.
Right, that drop. or just before you walk into a room full of strangers to, pitch a new idea.
It's terrifying for most people.
It really is. I mean, your heart rate spikes, your palms start to sweat,
Mm-hmm.
your breathing gets super shallow, and biologically speaking, your brain is triggering the exact same fight or flight response. I mean, literally flooding your system with cortisol as if you were actively being chased by a predator.
Right, because the brain doesn't know the difference.
Exactly. Our neurology interprets the potential for social rejection as, well, as physical death.
Yeah.
But we love to think of our business idols and champions as these superheroes born with a genetic gift for selling or networking. But what if that's a complete myth?
It absolutely is a myth.
Right. What if the only difference between struggling to find your next client and having a pipeline bursting with opportunities isn't natural talent at all, but just a few deliberate choices in how you think?
And that's exactly what we are dissecting in this deep dive. I mean, it is a profound shift in perspective.
So what are we looking at today exactly?
Well, we are exploring the core mental frameworks, the psychological architecture, really, specifically the 7 mindsets of fanatical prospectors. This separates the top 20% of earners in the business world from literally everyone else.
Okay, wow, so just the top 20%.
Yeah. And we aren't just looking at like a list of things they do. We are going to tear apart the mechanics of why it works on a neurological level.
Which is so crucial because whether you are, catching up on sales strategies, prepping for a massive business launch, or just insanely curious about the psychology of peak performers, you are about to learn how ordinary people make themselves extraordinary.
Right.
We're going to give you the blueprint to shortcut your way to a full pipeline, completely without the burnout.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to establish a baseline first. And the text anchors this perfectly in the work of psychologist Carol S. Dweck.
Oh, the mindset research.
Exactly. I know mindset has become a bit of a buzzword lately, but clinically, a mindset is simply a mental attitude or an inclination.
Like a lens.
Yes, the lens through which your brain filters incoming data. And Dweck's critical breakthrough, which the source material leans on heavily here, is that your mindset is completely within your control.
Because of neuroplasticity.
Right. It isn't this fixed personality trait you just inherit from your parents. It's an active daily cognitive process. It drives every action and reaction you have in the business world.
I am so glad we're starting with the idea that this is actually in our control. Because, the text also points back to an ancient but incredibly relevant reference from Aristotle.
Oh, right. The success leaves clues concept.
Exactly. Success leaves clues. There is zero need to reinvent the wheel here. If you duplicate the patterns of successful people, well, you duplicate their success.
It's not magic. It's observation and application.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's get into the first of the 7 mindsets.
So mindset number 1 is being optimistic and enthusiastic.
Which sounds simple, but I know it's not.
No, not at all. The concept here is that top performers attack the day fired up and ready to rock. They view each morning as a fresh opportunity to achieve.
And they just ignore all the negativity.
Completely. They brush past the naysayers, the complainers, and all the victims hanging out around the office coffee machine.
Okay, but I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Because, it's really easy to be optimistic when you're closing deals left and right and the market is booming.
Of course it is.
But how do you fake enthusiasm on a random Tuesday afternoon when you've just been hung up on 10 times in a row? Because trying to paste on a fake smile when you're drowning, that just leads to massive burnout.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the exact trap most people fall into. But the answer is that you absolutely do not fake it.
You don't.
No. Faking enthusiasm takes a massive amount of cognitive energy. It's totally unsustainable. It's about reaching deep inside to find stored enthusiasm.
Stored enthusiasm. Okay, tell me more about that.
It's the conscious choice to brush past negativity. Bitter people with a victim mindset simply do not succeed. So when a top prospector gets rejected, they don't pretend it didn't hurt. They tap into a reserve of optimism built on the fact that the next call is a totally fresh variable.
Okay, I want to try to visualize this for the listener.
Sure.
Let's think of this stored enthusiasm like a battery bank attached to a house with solar panels.
I like that.
So on a sunny day, when everyone is saying yes and the market is great, you're generating tons of power, right?
Right, the environment is feeding you.
Exactly. And you store the excess in this massive internal battery. But then the weather changes. A storm rolls in. You get those 10 brutal rejections.
The panels stop working.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the people who rely purely on the external environment, they just go dark. But the peak performer, even when the weather is terrible, their internal battery provides enough juice to make just one more call.
That is a brilliant analogy because the biological equivalent of that battery is basically your capacity to handle stress.
So how do you protect the battery?
Well, the practical takeaway here is that you have to obsessively protect your mental environment. When you have a bad day, do not go vent with the complainers.
Because they'll just drain you.
Exactly. Emotional contagion is real. They will siphon off whatever stored energy you have left. You have to isolate yourself, tap into your core motivation, and just make one more attempt.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But, optimism gets you out of bed and maybe gives you the energy to pick up the phone, but it takes way more than just a smile to actually win.
Oh, for sure. Which brings us directly to the second mindset.
Right. Being fiercely competitive.
Yes. Fanatical prospectors are completely hardwired to win.
But not in the way most people think, right? Because they aren't necessarily focused on destroying the rival company across town.
No, no. And what's fascinating here is how they view the battlefield. They see prospecting as a battle for a very specific, very scarce resource.
Which is attention.
Exactly. Human attention.
Yeah.
Your competitors want your prospects' time just as much as you do.
And the prospect's boss wants their time and their family and their inbox.
Exactly. So the competitive mindset isn't about, ruining the other guy's business. It's about valuing your own offering so much that you are willing to fight for the prospect's limited bandwidth.
I think amateurs picture the marketplace as this giant, crowded room where everyone is just whispering or shouting, really.
It's like shouting.
Right, shouting.
Yeah.
And the amateur thinks being competitive means just shouting louder than everyone else. Send more emails, call more times.
Which just becomes white noise.
Exactly. But the truly competitive prospector doesn't just whisper louder. They figure out how to navigate the room, tap the right person on the shoulder, and speak directly into their ear.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You have to treat gaining a prospect's attention as a game you are actively trying to win today, not just some task on a to-do list. You wake up prepared for a battle.
It changes your whole posture.
It really does. But this transitions us to mindset number 3. Because wanting to win that competitiveness, it's completely useless if you don't actually believe you belong in the room.
Which is confidence.
Yes. Approaching prospects with the absolute expectation of winning.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, because we just talked about how prospecting involves massive amounts of rejection. How can you legitimately expect to win when the sheer math of the job means you are going to hear no the vast majority of the time? I mean, isn't that just delusion?
This raises an important question about what confidence actually means in this context. It is not the delusion that everyone will say yes.
Okay, good, because that would be crazy.
It would be. Operational confidence is about the self-control to project strength and peer-level status. Because when the right prospect is finally on the line, you have to be persuasive enough to get them to give up their time.
And people can smell desperation.
Right. Oh, instantly. From a biological standpoint, prospects can smell fear and uncertainty in milliseconds. If you sound desperate, their brain categorizes you as a low-priority interruption.
So confidence is literally the armor against projecting that fear.
Exactly. The practical takeaway here is that before reaching out, you consciously have to check your posture, check your tone. You must project an expectation of success.
You're asking someone to trade their incredibly valuable time for your conversation. Your tone has to signal that it's a good trade.
Precisely. But even with the best armor, you still get knocked down.
Right. And that's the fourth mindset, isn't it? Being relentless.
Yes, because confident people get rejected all the time. The difference is what keeps them on the floor versus what gets them back up.
So what is it? Just a high need for achievement.
It's that, plus the absolute belief that persistence always wins. Fanatical prospectors actively flip the script on rejection.
How so? Like, do they just not feel it?
They feel it, but instead of letting it defeat them, they use it as motivational fuel. They operate on the determined belief that every no mathematically brings them closer to the next yes.
It's like digging for diamonds.
Exactly like that.
Right, because a relentless miner doesn't sit down and cry over a shovel full of dirt.
No, because they know it's part of the process.
Yeah, they actually celebrate it, because clearing that dirt means they're literally one scoop closer to the gem.
That's the reframe. So when you face rejection, the practical application is to immediately reframe it in your mind as fuel. Don't stop. Let the sting of the no physically propel you into the next dial.
Which is powerful.
Yeah.
But, being relentless without learning is just repeatedly running headfirst into a brick wall.
Oh, yeah, which is why you need the 5th mindset. being thirsty for knowledge.
Because if you just keep doing the wrong thing over and over, you're not getting closer to a yes. You're just efficiently failing.
Precisely. To break through, you must welcome feedback and coaching. It's about voraciously consuming books, podcasts, online training, and going to live seminars.
Having that unshakable belief that setbacks are just opportunities to learn.
Right.
But wait a minute. You and I both know people who spend all day, every day, listening to podcasts and reading business books.
Oh, the professional learners?
Yes, they color code their notes, they attend every webinar, but they never actually do any work.
Yeah.
How is this mindset different from just paralysis by analysis?
That is the crucial nuance. Fanatical prospectors don't learn to avoid working. Yeah, they learn to optimize their work. The amateur uses learning as a hiding place because it feels productive, but avoids rejection.
It makes so much sense.
The pro believes everything happens for a reason, so they use knowledge to dissect their actual failures. They make 50 calls, fail on 40 of them, and then seek out the specific knowledge to fix that exact problem.
So they are applying it in real time.
Exactly.
The practical takeaway for you listening is to dedicate time outside of your prime selling hours to invest in yourself.
Right. Outside of your golden hours.
Yes, the golden hours.
Yeah.
You have to seek out coaching specifically on the areas where you are actively failing.
Which naturally brings us to execution, because you've got the enthusiasm, the competitive drive, the confidence, the persistence, and the knowledge.
But now you actually have to do it.
And that requires a system. Mindset 6. Systematic and efficient.
Because the brain is lazy.
Yeah.
Right? It wants to conserve calories.
It does. And cold outreach is cognitively very expensive. So executing with near robotic efficiency is how the amateur separates from the pro.
What does that look like in practice?
It means protecting those golden hours we just mentioned. Blocking time. Concentrating your power to completely tune out distractions. And systematically working a targeted database.
It's like pro athletes. They don't just wander onto a field and hope for the best.
Right.
They have scheduled, blocked, highly structured practice times.
And the systematic prospector protects their time with that exact same jealousy.
So what does this all mean for the listener? It means treating your schedule like an absolute fortress. You have to be the CEO of your own time.
You really do.
Because if you don't systematize your efforts, your brain will take the path of least resistance. You will be constantly distracted by inbound emails, social media notifications, and low-value tasks.
Answering an email feels safe. Making a cold call feels dangerous, so if you don't block the time, you'll always choose the email.
Exactly. So block off specific, untouchable hours in your calendar dedicated solely to reaching out to prospects, and execute that block with robotic, emotionless precision.
But there is a catch.
Oh, what's the catch?
No system survives first contact with a changing marketplace perfectly intact.
Right. Because the economy changes, buyers change.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, Mindset 7, adaptive and flexible.
Because if your system is completely rigid, it'll just break when the market shifts.
Yes, you must be adaptable. This mindset is all about acute situational awareness, the ability to respond quickly to changing circumstances.
And the source material has a great framework for this, right? The 3 A's?
Yes, the 3 A's. Adopt, adapt, adapt.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, first you adopt. You keep your eyes open for new ideas and best practices. Maybe it's cutting-edge technology or a game-changing tactic that the top earners are using right now. You have to be willing to adopt it.
But you can't just copy it exactly.
No, because it won't sound like you. That's the second A. Adapt. You have to adapt to that new idea to fit your unique style, your specific industry, and your buyers.
And the third A?
Adept. You work at it, you practice it, until you become adept at execution.
It's exactly like being a martial artist.
Oh, how so?
Well, you learn a formal technique in the gym. That's adopt. But maybe your arms are a little longer or shorter than your instructors, so you tweak it. That's adapt.
Right.
And then you practice it 10,000 times until it's pure muscle memory in a real fight. You become adept.
That is exactly it. You keep trying the techniques, molding them to your voice, and practicing them until they feel completely natural.
So those are the 7 mindsets.
They are. And what's fascinating here is when you tie them all together, one core insight really emerges.
What is that?
Success in business and sales is not about finding an easy button.
Oh, definitely not.
The soul of this entire chapter is that you are in complete control of your mental attitude. By cultivating these 7 specific mindsets, the optimism, competitiveness, confidence, relentlessness, thirst for knowledge, systematic efficiency, and adaptability.
You completely change the game.
You do! You transform the grueling, rejection-heavy work of prospecting from a nightmare into a highly predictable engine for your own success.
You become the architect of your own pipeline,
Exactly.
which is incredibly validating, right?
Yes.
Because it means you don't have to be a superhero born with these traits. You simply have to choose to act on them, to practice them every single day.
It is a daily choice.
So to you listening, you now have the mental blueprint of a top-tier performer. You know exactly how they think. But having the right mindset is really only half the battle.
It's the prerequisite.
Right. What happens when it's time to actually execute? What happens when you pick up the phone?
That is where the rubber meets the road.
We've talked deeply about the psychology of the prospector today. But next time, we're going to dive into the psychology of the interruption.
That is going to be a fun one.
We'll tackle the age-old debate. Is cold calling really dead? Or are we all just terrifyingly afraid to pick up the phone and interrupt someone's day?
I think we both know the answer to that.
I think we do. Until then, take a look at your own mindset. Figure out which of the 7 you need to work on the most, cash those gaps, and go make things happen.
You know, if you just log onto LinkedIn right now or open basically any B2B newsletter,
Oh, right.
yeah, you'll see it instantly. You are just bombarded by these like high production value thought leaders making the exact same bold proclamation.
Yep. Cold calling is dead.
Exactly. Cold calling is dead. They tell you it's this archaic relic of the 1980s, right? But what if I told you that this entire debate over the death of cold calling is a complete smokescreen?
Oh, totally. It's a massive misdirection.
Right. Like, what if all these endless thought pieces about social selling and inbound funnels are actually just, designed to hide the one thing you are biologically wired to fear the most?
Yeah, I mean, we are living in this business era where we're incredibly quick to blame the methodology, right? Like if a pipeline is dry, we just say, oh, well, the tool is broken or the market shifted.
The buyer journey has evolved, right? We love saying that.
Exactly. We intellectualize our failures. But when you strip away all that corporate jargon, the obstacle isn't strategic at all. It's entirely internal.
It's biological.
It is. It's a deeply ingrained biological response that is basically actively masquerading as a sophisticated business decision.
Well, in this deep dive, we are stripping away that masquerade entirely. We are unpacking Chapter 3 of our source material on fanatical prospecting to really discover why this whole anti-cold calling movement is actually sabotaging your pipeline.
Sabotaging it completely.
Yeah, and you're going to learn why mastering the fine, somewhat uncomfortable art of the interruption is the ultimate competitive advantage. Whether you're in business, sales, entrepreneurship, this is about how you stop waiting passively for the phone to ring.
Right, and start taking absolute control over your own income.
Exactly. So to really wrap our heads around why this anti-prospecting movement has gained this almost like religious following, we have to look at the economic engine behind it.
Yeah, you have to follow the money.
Right. Because the modern business landscape is just flooded with this entire cottage industry of inbound marketing experts and sales enablement gurus.
Oh, the social selling consultants are everywhere.
Everywhere. And they are boldly declaring that any form of proactive outreach is just old school or even like offensive to the modern buyer.
Right, they act like it's an insult to call someone.
Yeah. But if we analyze the incentives, we have to ask, well, who truly benefits from that narrative?
Well, the gurus do, obviously.
Right. But I mean, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second because the inbound argument is, incredibly compelling on paper.
Oh, sure, it sounds great.
Right. Like, if I'm a chief marketing officer, my core argument is going to be that outbound outreach is just fundamentally inefficient. Why would I pay a team of sales reps these high base salaries to interrupt people who aren't even ready to buy?
Yeah, when you could just invest that money into optimizing your SEO.
Exactly. Running targeted ads, capturing people who already have high buying intent. The inbound gurus aren't just selling a dream, they are selling a mathematically measurable funnel.
Right, and that's exactly why the illusion is so powerful. It has that grain of truth to it.
It makes logical sense.
It does. Inbound marketing is highly measurable, and obviously capturing active intent is absolutely necessary for any business.
Yeah, you can't ignore it.
But here is where the math completely falls apart. The inbound model relies entirely on the buyer realizing they have a problem, diagnosing that problem themselves, and then actively searching for a solution.
Which takes a lot of effort on their part.
Right. And studies show that at any given moment, only about 3% of your total addressable market is actually in that active buying window.
Wait, only 3%?
Just 3%.
So the other 97% are just out there living their lives, completely unaware that they even need what you're selling.
Precisely. And the gurus who sell these inbound systems, they are capitalizing on a huge vulnerability here.
Which is what?
They are pandering to a salesperson's, or really any human being's, deepest, most primal desire, which is to avoid social friction and rejection.
Oh, wow.
Right. They're basically monetizing the fantasy of a friction-free universe. The author of our source material actually refers to this as Fantasy Island.
Fantasy Island. I love that.
Yeah, because human nature inherently seeks the path of least resistance. We all want the financial reward of closing a massive deal without the psychological risk of actually being told no.
Right. Nobody wants to be rejected.
Exactly. So these so-called experts have a massive vested financial interest in selling you what is essentially an easy button.
Let's look under the hood of that easy button mentality, because it reminds me a lot of the psychological trap of modern productivity culture.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, we convince ourselves that passive, comfortable activities are the exact same thing as actually moving the needle.
Yes. Fake work.
Yes, fake work. Like a sales rep might spend, I don't know, 3 hours rewriting their LinkedIn bio, curating the perfect aesthetic for their banner, researching industry news.
Organizing their CRM with little color-coded tags.
Right, and at the end of the day, they feel completely exhausted. They feel like they worked so hard, but they haven't actually spoken to a single human being who can give them money.
That is the insidious nature of passive work. It completely mimics the sensation of productivity, but doesn't carry any of the risk.
It's totally safe.
Exactly. So when a charismatic consultant comes along and says, hey, you never have to pick up the phone and feel that terrible feeling of rejection ever again, just buy my inbound content system.
People just throw their money at them.
They do. Highly intelligent, very capable professionals will entirely suspend their critical thinking. They grab onto that system like a life preserver.
Because the alternative, actually facing the unknown of a human reaction, just feels way too dangerous.
It feels like a threat.
So if you're listening to this right now and you find yourself constantly reorganizing your prospect lists instead of, actually dialing the numbers on them.
You're not preparing.
Right, you aren't preparing, you are hiding. Any activity that does not directly place you in a real conversation with a potential buyer is not prospecting.
It's just admin work.
Exactly. But this brings up a crucial data point from the source material that just completely shatters this idea that you can buy your way out of this problem with marketing.
Oh, the $1.2 million example.
Yes. The author mentions this client who is spending $1.2 million a month on inbound lead generation.
Yeah, $1.2 million every 30 days.
Just dedicated solely to making the phones ring.
Yeah.
Driving webinar signups, capturing web form submissions.
Yep, all inbound.
And my immediate reaction to that number is just total disbelief. Like, if a company is throwing $1.2 million at the internet every single month.
You'd think they'd have more leads than they could handle.
Right. Shouldn't that literally buy the entire market's attention? How could they possibly be struggling?
Yeah.
But the source material notes that this company's sales reps were still sitting idle 50% of the time.
Half their day just doing nothing.
Half their day, they were missing their targets. They ultimately had to resort to making proactive outbound calls just to hit their baseline numbers.
Yep.
So why didn't the math work? Like, where did the $1.2 million fail?
Well, it failed because it hit the ceiling of active market demand.
Okay, what does that mean?
It brings us to the law of diminishing returns in digital marketing. Once you capture that 3% of the market that we talked about, the ones who are actively searching every dollar you spend after that becomes exponentially less effective.
Because you're just bidding against everyone else.
Exactly. You're just bidding against your competitors for the exact same clicks, which just drives the cost of acquisition completely through the roof.
Right.
But more importantly than that, the $1.2 million spend completely misses a very specific demographic of buyer that the author refers to as whales.
Ah, the whales. The massive, lucrative, industry-defining accounts.
The ones everyone wants.
The deals that make a rep's entire year and completely change the trajectory of a company.
Exactly. And we really need to analyze the anatomy and the psychology of a whale, because a CEO or a VP of operations at a Fortune 500 company, they do not behave like a typical consumer.
No, not at all.
They are incredibly insulated. They have executive assistants, they have layers of management, gatekeepers whose entire job is just to protect their time.
Right. They are not sitting at their desks at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday just Googling, best enterprise software solutions.
No. They don't have the time to trigger their own buying journey.
They're too busy running a massive company.
Exactly. They don't have the time, and quite frankly, often they don't even know they have a problem until an outside expert points it out to them.
Interesting. So they're just completely unaware.
Yeah, they suffer from what we call the status quo bias. Their current systems might be super inefficient, they might be losing money, but they are comfortable.
Right. It's the devil they know.
Right. And furthermore, these whales already have a line of elite salespeople knocking on their physical and virtual doors all day long.
So if you just sit back and wait for a whale to organically stumble upon your cleverly written blog post, you're going to starve.
You will absolutely starve.
Mm-hmm.
If you want the biggest accounts in your industry, you cannot just outsource your pipeline to the marketing department. You have to grab a harpoon, go out into the rough waters, and hunt them yourself.
I want to really drill down into the mechanics of that hunt, because this is where the author introduces a concept that just completely reframes the entire industry dialogue for me.
Yeah, this is the core of it.
Because we spend so much time debating the temperature of a call,
And
right?
constantly.
Like, is it a cold call? Is it a warm call? Is it a hot inbound lead? The author argues that this obsession with temperature is entirely semantic.
It is. It's totally semantic.
It's just a distraction from the core reality of business generation, which is the act of the interruption.
Yeah, the temperature debate is honestly perhaps the greatest intellectual evasion in modern business.
That's a great way to put it.
Because the unvarnished truth is that to generate new revenue,
Yeah.
you must interrupt someone's day. There is no alternative reality where you don't.
Right.
You are contacting a human being who is not expecting you. You do not have a scheduled appointment with them. And you are initiating conversation about something you want them to do or consider.
Which is exactly an interruption.
That is the literal definition of an interruption.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter whether they downloaded your white paper 5 minutes ago or they have literally never heard of your company in their entire life. It is an interruption.
Let's visualize the cognitive cost of that interruption, because I think this is where people get tripped up.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Imagine you were sitting on your couch reading a brilliant, totally engrossing novel. You are in a deep state of flow.
Oh, I love that feeling.
Right. The default mode network in your brain is quiet, your task-positive network is fully engaged, and suddenly your absolute best friend in the world taps you on the shoulder to hand you a slice of your favorite cake.
Okay, great friend.
Right. But what is your very first split-second physiological reaction?
It's a jolt.
It's a jolt of annoyance.
Yeah, totally.
Your flow was broken. It doesn't even matter that it's your best friend. And it doesn't matter that they are bringing you something you absolutely love. The initial friction is caused entirely by the context switch.
That is such a brilliant way to illustrate the neuroscience of attention. Because when we shift that analogy to a business context, the implications are just massive.
Right, because it changes how we view inbound leads.
Exactly. Let's say a prospect just filled out a very detailed contact us form on your website.
Okay.
In any CRM system that is labeled a flaming hot lead.
Right, you're supposed to drop everything.
But if you pick up the phone and call them 10 minutes later, they have already moved on. They are drafting a complex email to their boss, or they are reviewing a massive spreadsheet.
Their brain is somewhere else entirely.
Yes. When their phone rings, you are forcing their brain to abandon its current task and process a completely new, unexpected stimulus. You are still interrupting them.
And naturally, their tone of voice is going to reflect that friction.
Every single time.
They might answer the phone sounding incredibly rushed, clipped, or even slightly irritated.
And this is exactly where the amateur salesperson completely fails.
How so?
The mediocre rep hears that rushed, slightly annoyed tone, and they immediately internalize it as a personal rejection.
Oh, they think they did something wrong.
Right. They think, oh, this person doesn't like me. They aren't interested in my product. This lead is garbage. They take the cognitive friction of the context switch, completely mislabel it as a failure of their outreach, and then retreat back to the safety of organizing their desk.
Back to the color-coded CRM tags.
Exactly. But the master salesperson understands that the friction is completely neutral. It is just the sound of a human brain shifting gears.
Wow. It's just the sound of a human brain shifting gears. That is such a powerful reframe.
It changes everything.
Because you have to accept the title of professional interrupter. You simply cannot help a client solve their massive, expensive business problems if you do not first have the courage to interrupt their status quo.
You have to be willing to break the glass.
Right. But if the math clearly shows that outbound hunting works. And if we can intellectually understand that the initial friction is just a harmless cognitive context switch,
Yeah.
why are we still fighting it so hard? There has to be something much deeper going on than just, lazy salespeople. What is the actual mechanism stopping a highly paid, highly educated professional from just picking up a phone?
Well, to understand that mechanism, we have to look past logic entirely and examine evolutionary biology.
Okay, getting into the science.
Yeah, because the source material makes a really profound point here. The reason professionals avoid the phone is almost never a lack of skill.
Right, they know what they're doing.
They know their product inside and out. They have perfectly crafted scripts. They have great communication skills. What actually paralyzes them is a deeply rooted biological fear response governed by the amygdala.
Oh, so we're talking about the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Exactly.
The exact same neurological pathway that kept our ancestors from getting eaten by predators on the savannah.
Precisely. Because when you initiate an interruption, you step entirely into the unknown. You have zero control over how the person on the other end of that line is going to react.
And the brain hates the unknown.
The brain despises the unknown. That lack of control makes you feel intensely vulnerable. You have to remember, as a species, human beings are deeply, deeply social creatures.
Right.
For hundreds of thousands of years, our physical survival depended entirely on our inclusion in the tribe. If you disrupted the harmony of the tribe and you were exiled, you literally died.
Wait, so on a neurological level, when we interrupt a prospect and they get annoyed, our brain doesn't just register it as a lost business opportunity.
No.
Our brain registers it as a literal threat to our social standing. It feels like we're being kicked out of the tribe and left to die.
That is exactly what happens. The conscious mind, of course, knows it's just a phone call.
Right, logically we know we're safe in an office.
But the subconscious, ancient brain interprets that potential annoyance as a life-or-death scenario. So it floods your system with cortisol. Your palms sweat. Your heart rate increases.
Your mouth gets dry.
Yes. Your brain is literally screaming at you, do not perform this action. It is a threat to your survival.
Wow.
This is why call reluctance is so incredibly powerful. It is not some logical business calculation. It is a primal survival instinct.
And the book provides this amazing case study that proves just how irrational this biological fear can be.
Oh, the former customer list?
Yes. So the author was working with this client who had hired a team of young, really bright, capable sales reps. And their specific assignment was just to call a list of former customers to try and reactivate their accounts.
Right, which in the vocabulary of sales, these are the warmest of warm layups.
Right, there's no ice to break.
None. There's a shared history. The customers have already given this company money in the past. They know the brand. They've experienced the value of the product. The risk of genuine hostile rejection is as close to zero as it ever gets in business.
Yet what actually happened on the sales floor?
They completely froze.
They completely froze. The author observed them just agonizing over these lists. They were stalling, going to get coffee, tweaking their scripts for the fifth time, just obsessing over the what-ifs.
Right, trying to perfectly choreograph the conversation.
Exactly. They were trying to perfectly choreograph every single aspect of the call before dialing a single digit, just terrified of what might happen. They were treating a simple, friendly customer service call to a former client like they were negotiating a hostage release.
It's crazy.
It's a perfect illustration of the brain just catastrophizing the unknown.
And scientifically, it isolates the variable perfectly.
What do you mean?
Well, if the list was as warm as it could possibly be, and the reps still experienced that paralyzing reluctance, it proves definitively that the obstacle is not the temperature of the prospect.
Oh, I see.
The obstacle is entirely the internal biological fear of initiating the interruption. The reps were just paralyzed by the uncertainty of the outcome.
And the way the author breaks that paralysis is fascinating. Because he doesn't give them a big motivational speech. He doesn't teach them some clever new closing technique.
No, he just does the work.
He just walks over, grabs the list of numbers, sits down right in the middle of the sales floor, and starts dialing. He dials 25 numbers in rapid succession right in front of them.
The boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. And out of those 25 dials, he instantly finds 3 people who are ready to buy right then and there.
Just waiting to be asked.
Yes. They weren't angry. They weren't hostile. They were just, waiting for someone to ask for their business again.
What the author performed there was essentially rapid exposure therapy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
He demonstrated the power of action to dispel biological fear, because our brains inflate the danger of a phone call to these catastrophic proportions. We sit at our desks and we vividly imagine the prospect just screaming at us, insulting our intelligence, calling our CEO to complain and ruin our reputation.
But the reality is never like that.
Almost never. The physical reality of the action almost never matches the psychological anticipation. The reality is usually just a mild brush off, a request to call back later, or surprisingly often a highly productive business conversation.
Right, and once those young reps actually saw the reality of the interruption, that it wasn't physically fatal, that people were generally polite, and most importantly, that there was immediate money to be made,
The spell was broken.
the spell was totally broken. Their neurochemistry settled down, they hit the phones, and within a single week, they generated $100,000 in reactivated revenue.
Which proves that action is the only known cure for this specific type of fear.
You can't think your way out of it.
You cannot outthink call reluctance. You can't read enough books or attend enough seminars to make the fear magically go away. You have to physically teach your nervous system that the action is safe.
By doing it.
Exactly. And the only way to do that is to execute the interruption over and over again until your amygdala finally stops firing the alarm.
Which brings us to the final, and I think perhaps the most sophisticated way that we try to avoid doing this hard work.
The semantic trap.
Yes, the semantic trap. We take this deep biological anxiety, this primal fear of the unknown interruption, and we completely mask it with vocabulary. We turn it into a terrifying conceptual monster, and we give that monster a name.
Cold calling.
Cold calling.
It is a brilliant example of how language shapes our reality, which is very similar to the concept of linguistic relativity in psychology.
Right, how the words we use define what we can see.
Exactly. By putting a label on the thing we fear, we give it boundaries, and more importantly, we give ourselves a framework to avoid it entirely. We categorize every single form of proactive, outbound outreach under the umbrella term of cold calling.
Everything is a cold call if you don't want to do it.
Yes. And because the dominant industry narrative, which is, again, funded by those inbound marketing systems we discussed earlier.
Right, follow the money.
Because that narrative says cold calling is dead, we suddenly have this socially acceptable, industry-approved excuse to literally never reach out to anyone.
We build a psychological shield out of semantics.
Literally.
And the source material provides another just incredible real-world example of how absurd this semantic trap gets.
The insurance agents.
Oh my goodness, the insurance agents. So the author was consulting for this group of agents from a massive, highly respected company, and their task for the week was incredibly simple and highly beneficial for their clients.
Right, it wasn't even a hard pitch.
Not at all. They were instructed to call their current book of business people who are actively paying them monthly premiums right now.
So existing clients.
Existing clients. And they just needed to review their coverage to see if they would benefit from an umbrella liability policy.
Okay, so to be very clear here, this is not a solicitation to a stranger. This is a fiduciary check-in.
It's good customer service.
It is proactive customer service that naturally uncovers a gap in protection, which then naturally leads to a cross-sell.
Mm-hmm.
It is the absolute definition of adding value to an existing relationship.
It is the easiest, most valuable call an agent can possibly make. But the reaction from these seasoned professionals was just absolute resistance.
We fought it.
They fought it tooth and nail. They generated this massive mountain of excuses. And one agent actually complained to the author, stating with total unironic sincerity, I didn't sign up for cold calling.
Wow.
I didn't sign up for cold calling.
The author had to politely point out the completely obvious reality there, which is that calling a current client who already trusts you and actively does business with you is the furthest possible thing from a cold call.
The level of cognitive dissonance there is just staggering to me. It's like a cardiologist refusing to tell a patient to eat healthier and stop smoking. And when you question the doctor, he says, hey, I didn't sign up to nag people.
That's a great analogy.
It is an absolute abandonment of professional duty, but it's totally masked as a philosophical objection to a specific methodology.
Right.
The insurance agent just didn't want to face the very mild friction of interrupting their client's day, so they deliberately mislabeled the task as cold calling to justify their own inaction.
And I think it really highlights the moral dimension of sales and proactive business.
The moral dimension. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, because if you truly believe that your product or service actually solves a problem or saves money or mitigates risk for your client, then you have a professional obligation to interrupt them and tell them about it.
You're doing them a disservice if you don't.
Exactly. When that insurance agent hid behind the excuse of, I don't cold call, they were actively choosing their own temporary emotional comfort over the financial safety and liability protection of their own client.
That's powerful.
When you reframe the interruption not as this annoying burden, but as an act of professional service, the biological fear really begins to lose its grip.
So if you are listening to this right now, you need to conduct a pretty ruthless audit of your own vocabulary.
Absolutely.
Like, how many times this week have you used the phrase cold call to just give yourself an easy out? How many times have you looked at a list of past clients or a list of highly targeted prospects who desperately need exactly what you do?
And you just decided to send a passive email instead.
Right. Because, oh, well, cold calling is dead. You have to strip away that psychological shield. Call the action exactly what it is. It is an interruption.
Pure and simple.
It might be a warm interruption based on a lot of past business. It might be a highly researched contextual interruption, or it might be a completely blind interruption. But it is always an interruption. You have to accept the reality of the friction and execute the action anyway.
Yeah, to really synthesize the entire architecture of this chapter, we have to look at the fundamental truth that really separates the elite performers from the rest of the market.
And what is that?
The endless, exhausting debate over whether to cold call or not to cold call is a total illusion. It's completely fake. It is a debate designed entirely to distract you from doing the actual work. True success in business, in entrepreneurship, in building any kind of sustainable pipeline does not come from discovering some magical frictionless system where buyers just organically throw money at you without you ever having to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
That system simply does not exist.
Fantasy Island is closed.
Fantasy Island is permanently closed. The reality is that human beings are busy, they are distracted, they are guarded. They do not like their flow state broken by anyone.
Not even for cake.
Not even for cake.
Mm-hmm.
Success comes from a place of radical acceptance. You must accept the biological and neurological reality that interrupting someone inherently causes friction.
It's always going to be a little awkward.
Always. It triggers your ancient survival instincts. And then, knowing all of that, you must actively develop the courage, the emotional discipline, and strategic skill to interrupt them anyway. Because stepping directly into that friction is literally the only reliable way to take absolute control over your pipeline, your business growth, and ultimately, your financial destiny.
Well, now that you know you cannot escape the necessity of interrupting your prospects, the strategic landscape completely shifts. The question is no longer if you should interrupt, but how you do it efficiently.
Exactly.
You know, you can't just blindly knock on digital doors all day without a plan, and you certainly can't just spam thousands of people with automated LinkedIn messages and call that prospecting.
Oh, please don't do that.
Right. So how do you strategically balance the phone, email, social touch points, and in-person networking so you aren't just, shouting into the void?
That balance methodology is crucial.
And that is exactly what we need to master next. But before we go, I really want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you look at your own pipeline today.
Okay.
Think about the direction the world is moving right now. We are entering this era of infinite AI-generated content.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Everywhere. Your prospects' inboxes are just flooded with automated emails. Their social feeds are entirely curated by algorithms. Everyone else in your industry is desperately searching for that easy button, and they are outsourcing their outreach to bots because they are biologically terrified of human friction.
Yep.
So, in a world where digital communication costs absolutely $0 and takes zero courage, doesn't your willingness to actually pick up the phone, break through the digital noise, and embrace the messy, uncomfortable human reality of an interruption?
Doesn't it just...
Right. Doesn't it become your ultimate untouchable competitive advantage? So why do so many really smart, ambitious professionals swear they are just better in person? Or, better over email?
Oh, yeah.
Like, they say this constantly, but then their bank accounts and their empty calendars are just telling a completely different story.
It is, it's the ultimate cognitive dissonance in the business world today.
Yeah.
You have these highly intelligent people looking at a completely failing system, and they are blaming literally everything except the one variable they actually control.
Right. And I want you, if you're listening right now, to really sit with that question for a second. Just Think about your own daily routine.
Exactly. Look at your own habits.
Because if you have ever found yourself making these really logical sounding excuses to avoid a certain type of outreach, like maybe you're staring at the phone and it feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds.
A 10,000-pound phone, yeah.
Right. And you tell yourself, well, my buyers are sophisticated, they just respond better to a nicely crafted LinkedIn message. If you do that, you might be actively sabotaging your own success.
Oh, without a doubt. You are engineering your own plateau.
So today we are taking a deep dive into Chapter 4 of Jeb Blount's Fanatical Prospecting. It's titled Adopt a Balanced Prospecting Methodology.
A really crucial chapter.
It is. And you're about to learn why relying on a single sales tactic is, honestly, the fastest route to career suicide.
Yeah, that's not an overstatement, by the way.
Not at all. We're going to talk about how to build a diversified prospecting portfolio that, practically speaking, guarantees results. And this matters so much for anyone interested in business or entrepreneurship.
Because mastering this balance, it's the ultimate shortcut, right? It keeps your pipeline full. It heavily reduces your anxiety, and it lets you actually take control of your income.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, we have to start by kind of dismantling the lies we tell ourselves. Because everyone, literally everyone, from a day one Ricky to a seasoned enterprise executive, they naturally gravitate toward what feels easiest.
Right, the path of least resistance.
Yeah, exactly. Our brains are hardwired for it. When we are faced with a task that carries a really high probability of social friction or, rejection.
Which is terrifying for most people.
Right. Our subconscious doesn't just tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm scared. It's much more insidious than that.
Right, it doesn't say I'm scared, it says I have a strategy.
Yes. It creates a rationalization. It invents a strategic, professional-sounding business reason for why we should avoid doing the hard work.
And that rationalization, it usually sounds something like, well, I'm a relationship builder.
I've heard that a million times.
Right. So I need to focus on in-person networking. We've all met that person. Let's call her Janice.
Okay, Jess.
Janice emphatically claims she's just phenomenally gifted face-to-face.
Of course she is.
Therefore, she shouldn't waste her time making cold outbound calls. She shouldn't send targeted emails. She needs to be at lunches. She needs to be at trade shows.
Which, that sounds incredibly reasonable until you look at the raw data.
Yeah. The data doesn't lie.
The pipeline is an objective truth teller. It does not care about your perceived strengths. It doesn't care about your comfort zone. If Janice is spending 40 hours a week waiting for the perfect networking event to somehow materialize.
Which takes forever to plan, by the way.
Right. Her pipeline is going to be incredibly fragile. Gravitating to a single methodology under this guise of playing to your strengths, it severely suboptimizes productivity.
Because it completely ignores the reality of the market.
Exactly. Your prospects are consuming information and making decisions across multiple different channels, not just the one you happen to like.
Right, because if you only network, you are completely missing the buyer who hates networking events, but they vigorously check their email every morning at 7 a.m.
You're just totally invisible to them.
Completely. But I want to dig into the psychology of this for a minute, because the excuse, I'm so much better at X, it's almost always masking a very specific fear.
Oh, absolutely. It is the fear of acute, unvarnished rejection.
Acute rejection. Let's define that. Like, what makes rejection acute versus whatever the alternative is, like a soft rejection?
Yeah, think about the different mediums we use to communicate.
Yep.
If you spend 3 hours crafting the perfect email sequence, right?
Yep.
And you hit send on 1,000 emails, and nobody replies. That is a rejection.
Sure.
But it's a soft rejection. Your ego is largely protected. You could sit there and tell yourself a dozen comforting stories.
Oh, totally. Like the timing was wrong, or it went to their spam folder.
Exactly. They were just too busy this week to reply. And the same exact thing goes for social selling.
Right, LinkedIn.
If you write a big thought leadership post on LinkedIn and it gets 0 engagement, you could just blame the algorithm.
Right, it's never my fault. It's the tech. The platform is rigged against me today.
Exactly. But the telephone, which is universally the channel people avoid the absolute most.
Yeah.
It strips away all of those psychological buffers.
Every single one.
When you call someone and you interrupt their Tuesday morning and they tell you, I'm not interested, do not ever call this number again, and they just slam the phone down.
Ouch. Yeah.
There is no algorithm to blame there. It is immediate, It's visceral, and it feels incredibly personal.
It's an evolutionary trigger. Like, it literally triggers a biological response.
It genuinely is. I mean, from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, being rejected by a peer or a member of the tribe triggered a literal survival threat.
Right, because thousands of years ago, social ostracization basically meant you were going to starve.
Exactly. If you get kicked out of the tribe, you die.
Mm.
So when a prospect hangs up on you, your brain processes that acute rejection as a physical threat. Your
Wow.
heart rate spikes. Cortisol just floods your system. The brain says, hey, do not do that again. It hurts.
Please start picking up the heavy phone.
Right. So to protect you from the telephone, your brain invents the Janus defense.
Right. I shouldn't call because my skill set is just so much stronger in person. Let's do lunch instead.
It is a defense mechanism that is masquerading as a business strategy.
Which makes it so incredibly dangerous because you actually believe your own excuse. I mean, it sounds true to you.
You fully buy into it.
Let's look at what this actually does to the overall health of your business because it reminds me of going to the gym.
Okay, yeah.
If I go to the gym and I only do bicep curls because, well, I enjoy them, I get a great pump, and I'm just naturally good at them.
Right, the vanity muscles.
Exactly. And I entirely skip leg day. I skip core work. I do literally zero cardiovascular training.
You're going to look pretty weird.
Right. I mean, sure, my arms might look okay in a t-shirt, but my overall systemic health is fundamentally compromised.
The structural integrity of the entire system is just broken.
Yes. If I have to, like, sprint to catch a flight or I have to help a friend move a heavy sofa up some stairs, my body is going to fail me because I haven't built the supporting musculature. And that is exactly what a single-channel prospector is doing. They have one massive, overdeveloped bicep. Like, maybe they are just amazing at inbound marketing.
But the rest of their revenue engine is completely atrophied.
Yes.
If we translate that gym analogy directly to a business environment, a single point of failure is catastrophic.
It's a ticking time bomb.
It really is. Let's say your entire pipeline is built on inbound leads that you generate through Facebook ads.
Okay.
You are the absolute master of Facebook ads. That is your bicep curl.
Right.
What happens when the platform changes its privacy policies overnight? Or they alter the ad auction algorithm and suddenly your cost per lead quadruples in a span of 48 hours?
Which happens all the time, by the way.
Constantly.
You are basically out of business because you don't know how to pick up a phone, you don't have a warm email database, and you literally don't know how to network in a room.
You lack the foundational strength to survive a shift in the environment. And this is exactly why the text says the pipeline always reveals the truth.
The pipeline never lies.
A robust pipeline isn't just about the total number of opportunities you have in there. It's about the diversity of the sources that are generating those opportunities.
Right. Where are they coming from?
When you rely on one channel, you aren't just sub-optimizing your productivity. You are exposing your entire livelihood to external variables that you cannot control.
So if you are listening to this deep dive right now, you really need to ruthlessly audit your own excuses.
Yes. Be brutally honest with yourself.
The next time you justify skipping a certain type of outreach because, it's not your style or it doesn't align with your personal brand.
Oh, the personal brand excuse.
Right. You need to recognize that thought for exactly what it is. It's a biological fear response trying to cheat you out of commissions, out of market share, and out of growth.
You are skipping leg day.
You are skipping leg day, and eventually the market is going to force you to sprint.
And the really tragic part about all of this is that this psychological vulnerability, this desperate desire we have to avoid the heavy lifting of a balanced routine, it is actively weaponized by the marketplace.
Oh, big time.
We see this constantly. Our fear makes us incredibly susceptible to really bad advice.
Well, this brings us to the entire industry that has essentially sprung up around single-channel salvation.
Yes.
I mean, you open any social media app today, and there is a marketer or some self-proclaimed guru on every virtual street corner, and they are preaching the one true path to filling your pipeline.
And their primary marketing tactic is almost always demonization.
Explain that. What do you mean?
They have to tear down the foundational pillars of sales to make their shiny new object look appealing.
Right.
So they get on camera and they proclaim, cold calling is dead. Email is dead. Networking is for dinosaurs.
Old school.
Right, it's all old school. And then they position their specific method, whether it's some automated direct messaging bot or a proprietary inbound funnel, as the exclusive modern way to do business.
But let's be honest for a second. It works. I mean, I have bought those courses in the past.
A lot of us have.
When someone looks at you and tells you, hey, you never have to face rejection again, just buy my $999 system and leads will just magically book themselves on your calendar.
It's an intoxicating promise.
It's so intoxicating.
Because it appeals directly to that primal fear we were just talking about. They aren't really selling a business system. They are selling psychological relief.
They're selling a painkiller.
Exactly. Take this pill, and you'll never have to feel the sting of a prospect hanging up on you again.
But the reality of maintaining a consistent income in the real world, where you have a mortgage to pay and a family to feed and actual quotas to hit it, demands that we reject these magic pills.
Because the people selling these systems are often entirely insulated from the consequences of their own advice.
That is such a good point.
Right. If their system stops working, they don't lose their house. They just invent a new system and sell that one instead.
Yeah, but if you adopt their single-channel methodology and it fails, you lose your job.
It's financial malpractice, really.
It totally is, which perfectly transitions into how we view risk in literally every other area of our life, except for how we build our businesses.
What's fascinating here is how we handle investments.
Let's talk about investment strategies.
Okay.
Because if a friend came up to you after attending, say, a flashy wealth-building seminar, and they were just buzzing with excitement, and they tell you, look, I just got the ultimate stock tip. I'm taking my entire 401k, my kids' college fund, all my liquid savings, and I am putting every single penny into this one obscure tech startup.
You would stage an intervention immediately.
Absolutely. You'd grab them by the collar and tell them they are crazy.
Aye.
You're courting absolute financial ruin. It violates the most basic law of wealth preservation.
We innately understand the necessity of diversification when it comes to our capital. Yeah. A healthy financial portfolio absolutely requires a mix of asset classes. Yeah. You need domestic stocks, you need international equities, bonds, real estate, cash reserves.
Right. You don't just buy one thing.
You do this so that if the tech sector crashes, your bonds or your real estate holdings stabilize your net worth. You spread the risk to guarantee a predictable long-term yield.
But then we don't do that at work.
No. We walk into our offices on Monday morning, we sit down at our laptops, and we completely abandon that basic logic. We put all of our professional capital, our time, our energy, our lead generation into a single asset class.
We put it all into the social selling basket, or, the wait for referrals basket.
Which is lunacy when you frame it that way.
It is. If your entire lead generation strategy is waiting for referrals, you have zero control over the velocity of your pipeline.
None. You are completely at the mercy of your clients' memories and their willingness to advocate for you on any given day.
So treating your daily outreach like a diversified 401k is really the only mathematical way to ensure stability.
Exactly. A healthy, robust pipeline requires a balanced portfolio of methodologies.
So what does that portfolio actually look like?
Well, you need the telephone to cut through the noise and create immediate conversations.
Yeah.
You need targeted email to scale your messaging. You need social selling to build ambient awareness and credibility.
Sure.
You need networking to build deep, localized relationships. And you absolutely need a systematic referral strategy.
Okay, so when you balance all these methodologies, you create this economic machine that is insulated from macro-level shocks.
Yeah, because if a global event wipes out in-person networking for a year, which we've obviously seen happen, your phone and email channels pick up the slack.
Right. But I am completely on board with the theory of diversification. I really am. But I am going to aggressively push back on the application here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because honestly, this sounds like a recipe for total mediocrity. Well, if I take my 8-hour workday and I split my focus 5 different ways, let's say 20% phone, 20% email, 20% social, 20% networking, 20% inbound.
Okay.
Aren't I just guaranteeing that I never achieve mastery in any of them? I mean, in today's hyper-competitive economy, doesn't the specialist always beat the generalist?
That's the argument.
Right. If I spread myself that thin, the person who spends 10 hours a day doing nothing but mastering cold email is going to absolutely destroy me in the inbox.
That is a phenomenal challenge. And honestly, it's the exact trap that causes people to regress back to their single preferred channel.
Because it feels safer to just be good at one thing.
Yes. But the flaw in that argument is the assumption that balance requires an equal symmetrical distribution of your time.
Oh.
Balance does not mean a perfectly divided pie chart where you spend exactly 60 minutes on 5 different tasks every single day.
Okay, yeah, that would be terrible.
That would be exhausting. And yes, it would lead to mediocrity because you'd be constantly context switching. You'd never get into a flow state.
So wait, what does a balanced methodology actually look like in practice then, if it's not a symmetrical pie chart?
It looks like a fluid, highly localized distribution of effort based on the specific variables of your environment.
Like a mixing board.
Exactly. Think of it less like splitting your time equally and more like turning the dials on a mixing board in a recording studio.
Right.
Sometimes the bass needs to be heavily amplified and the treble dialed way back to make the track sound right.
So what are the dials in this scenario?
The ideal mix of prospecting channels depends entirely on four major variables: your industry, the complexity of your product, your average contract value, and your geographic territory.
Okay, let's break those down. How does the industry or, say, the product complexity dictate my mix?
Consider an independent management consultant.
Okay.
Their average contract value might be $100,000, and the sales cycle could be 9 months long.
A big slow deal.
Right. And their product is essentially their own intellectual capital and their trustworthiness.
Yeah.
For that consultant, picking up a phone and aggressively cold calling CEOs 50 times a day might actually damage their brand equity.
Oh, for sure. It positions them as a desperate vendor, not a trusted advisor.
Exactly. So for them, the dials on the mixing board need to be heavily weighted toward social selling, publishing white papers, speaking at conferences, and driving inbound interest.
That makes sense.
That might be 70% of their strategy, but they still need the other 30%, which would be highly targeted, personalized emails to specific executives and strategic networking to ensure they aren't just passively waiting for the phone to ring.
They still have to do outbound, just a different flavor of it.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. Now, contrast that with someone selling, let's say, enterprise cybersecurity software or some really complex SaaS platform.
Exactly. In the complex software space, buyers do an immense amount of self-education before they ever want to speak to a human being.
They don't want to be sold to.
No, they are reading G2 reviews, they're watching webinars, they are comparing feature sets on Reddit.
Right.
So the marketing department's inbound funnel is going to carry a massive amount of the weight there. But the salesperson can't just sit there twiddling their thumbs waiting for the inbound leads to drop.
Right, because you'll starve.
They have to balance it by using the phone and email to penetrate the accounts that aren't raising their hands.
And we also have to consider the scale of the organization you work for, right? Because
Yeah.
there is a massive friction point here between sales and marketing that I think we really need to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
If you work for a massive legacy corporation, like a Fortune 500 company, they probably have a CRM system that has been collecting data for 20 years.
Mountains of data.
Mountains. They have tens of thousands of past customers, churned accounts, and qualified leads just sitting in a database gathering dust.
So in that environment, spending 3 hours a day trying to build a personal brand on LinkedIn is a catastrophic waste of company time and resources.
Right, because the gold is already in the building.
Exactly. The most efficient, high-leverage activity you can do in that scenario is pick up the phone and run targeted email campaigns to mine that existing database.
Yeah.
The terrain dictates the tool.
Terrain is the perfect word for it. It actually reminds me of understanding geographic density.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you are selling office supplies or maybe point-of-sale systems, and your territory is downtown Manhattan or the Loop in Chicago,
Okay, high density.
super high density. If you have massive skyscrapers with 50 businesses packed into a single building, the most efficient methodology there might actually be the oldest one in the book: walking door to door.
In-person prospecting.
Exactly. You can knock on 20 corporate doors in the time it takes a rep sitting in a cubicle to navigate one automated phone tree.
Because the density of the terrain supports that methodology.
Right. Now take that exact same product, but your territory is rural Wyoming.
Oh boy. Yeah, you'd spend 4 hours just driving between two small businesses.
Right. In-person prospecting would literally bankrupt you on gas money alone.
This is exactly why generic formulas fail so miserably. It is like selecting the right gear for the ecosystem you are operating in.
Let's use an analogy here.
Think about fishing. If you are trying to catch a massive, highly evasive marlin in the deep ocean, you do not use a wide, shallow net.
No, that wouldn't work at all.
You use highly specialized sonar, a very specific type of bait, and a heavy-duty rod. You are basically spearfishing for a high-value target.
Which is like account-based marketing, highly targeted phone and email outreach.
Precisely. But if you are trying to catch hundreds of small fish in a heavily stocked, shallow pond, you throw a wide net. That's a high-volume email blast or a mass webinar.
Right. And if you bring the wide net to the deep ocean, you catch absolutely nothing but seaweed.
Yep.
And if you bring the spear gun to the shallow pond, you are going to starve because it's wildly inefficient.
Exactly. So the practical application for building your methodology isn't to buy some guru's universal template and blindly paste it over your business.
It's to figure out what game you're actually playing.
It is to conduct a ruthless, objective analysis of your terrain.
So how do you actually do that? Like, if I'm a listener right now and I'm looking at my territory and my product, how do I actually find the right baseline mix?
You look at the empirical evidence around you,
Okay.
find the top performers in your specific company. Or, if you are a solo entrepreneur, find the highest earners in your local industry networking group.
And just ask them what they do.
No, actually do not ask them what they think you should do.
Wait, really? Why not?
Because people's self-reported advice is often terribly flawed. They tell you what they think they do, or what sounds good, not what they actually do.
Oh, that makes sense.
Instead, look at their calendars. Look at their CRM data if you have access to it within your company. Reverse engineer their specific balance.
Look at the math.
Yes. How many outbound dials are they actually making? What percentage of their deals are sourced from referrals versus cold outreach? How much time do they really dedicate to industry events? Find out what mix of channels is mathematically yielding the highest return in your shared terrain and model that baseline.
Okay, but this introduces a massive hidden trap.
Oh, yes, it does.
And this is probably the most dangerous part of adopting a balanced methodology, because modeling top performers can actually destroy your career if you don't understand the context of time.
You are talking about the tenure trap.
The tenure trap. We need to explore this deeply because this dynamic plays out in literally every single sales organization on the planet.
Well, Phil,
Every company has a Joe.
we all know Joe. Joe is the 20-year veteran.
Right. Joe has been working the exact same territory, selling the exact same product to the exact same industry for 2 full decades.
He's an institution.
Joe is a legend in the office. He makes million-dollar quarters look like a leisurely stroll in the park.
He rolls into the office at 9:30 a.m. with a coffee.
Right, and he leaves at 3:0 p.m. to play golf.
Naturally.
If you look at Joe's activities, he barely makes any cold calls. His entire methodology seems to consist of fielding inbound referrals, managing existing accounts, taking people to expensive steakhouses, and sending perfectly timed text messages to CEOs he already knows.
Joe's pipeline is pristine, and his effort appears completely minimal.
So what happens next? A brand new rookie gets hired right out of college. Or maybe someone transitions into a new industry and starts on day one.
And management says, hey, go shadow Joe. He's our best guy.
Exactly. They are told to shadow the top performer. They look at Joe and they have an epiphany. Wow, Joe is making $500,000 a year and he never cold calls.
He never sends cold emails.
He just takes clients to lunch and builds deep relationships. That is the secret to success in this industry. I am going to adopt Joe's methodology.
And we connect this to the bigger picture. Within 6 months, that rookie is fired for non-performance.
They starve to death.
Completely.
Why? What did they miss?
Because they were doing exactly what Joe did. They fell victim to the iceberg illusion.
Explain that.
They are observing the visible tip of Joe's success, which is his current effortless state, but they are completely blind to the massive submerged foundation that makes it possible. They didn't see Joe 20 years ago.
Right. Joe wasn't playing golf 20 years ago.
Absolutely not. Joe's current, seemingly laid-back, referral-heavy schedule was paid for in advance by years of grueling, relentless, fanatical prospecting.
He paid his dues.
When Joe started, he didn't have a book of business. He didn't have deep industry relationships. He had a territory and a telephone.
Yeah.
He spent his first 5 years aggressively interrupting prospects. He cold called until his throat was sore. He knocked on doors in the pouring rain and faced thousands upon thousands of rejections.
I think of this like watching a master jazz musician.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. If you go to a jazz club in New York and you watch a world-class saxophonist on stage, they are improvising effortlessly. Their eyes are closed, they're leaning back, they're playing notes that technically break the conventional rules of music theory, and it sounds absolutely transcendent.
It looks entirely instinctual, like they aren't even trying.
Right. And a beginner sits in the audience, watches that, and thinks, wow, this is amazing. I don't need to read sheet music. I don't need to practice boring scales. The secret to great jazz is just to close your eyes, feel the vibe, and blow into the horn.
And when they try it, it sounds like a dying goose.
It's unlistenable.
Truly awful.
Because what the beginner doesn't realize is that the jazz master spent 10 years locked in a windowless practice room.
Playing scales.
They played scales for 8 hours a day. They mastered the grueling, rigid fundamentals of music theory. They understand the underlying math of chords so intimately that they no longer have to think about it consciously.
They earn the right to improvise.
Exactly. They earned it because they built a mechanical foundation so solid that it became instinctual.
That is a brilliant translation of the mechanics at play here.
Yeah.
Joe, the veteran salesperson, played his scales.
He sure did.
Through pure, high-volume outbound effort, he built a massive database. And over the course of 2 decades, he qualified those leads.
He knows everything about them.
He learned exactly when their specific buying windows open. He knows that Company X always signs their new budgets in October, and Company Y usually looks for new vendors in March. He built deep familiarity and trust in the market.
So now his pipeline is full of highly qualified, mature opportunities.
His methodology naturally evolved.
Exactly. His required balance shifted. He no longer needs to make 100 cold calls a day because he has an entire ecosystem working for him.
His balance shifted away from raw outbound interruption and moved heavily toward relationship nurturing, account management, and referral generation.
But he had to pay the initial price of admission.
He couldn't skip the line.
This is such a critical reality check for anyone listening. You have to radically acknowledge your own career stage. The tenure trap is deadly because it tricks you into adopting a late-stage strategy in an early-stage environment.
If you are new to a role, if you just took over a new geographic territory, or if you are an entrepreneur launching a startup and trying to build a brand from scratch, your required prospecting balance cannot look like Joe's.
Not even close.
Your mixing board has to be entirely different.
It has to be heavily, heavily weighted toward raw outbound interruption.
Yes, because you have no ambient awareness.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who you are. You have to force the market to acknowledge your existence.
You have to pick up the phone, you have to knock on the doors, you have to send the cold emails, you have to build the database from zero.
You have to play the scales.
And this is where the psychological friction comes roaring back. Because playing the scales is boring, it's repetitive, and it invites massive amounts of rejection.
It's painful.
It really is. It is much more comfortable to pretend you are a late-stage jazz master and tell your manager, well, I'm focusing on my personal brand right now, I'm doing social selling.
But if you try to skip the foundational phase, your pipeline will never reach critical mass.
Never.
It requires immense humility and hard work to accept that in year 1, you might have to spend 70% of your time doing the exact things that terrify you the most.
But here is the good news, and really the promise of the balanced methodology. It doesn't stay that way forever.
The compounding interest of effort.
Precisely. As you aggressively build that database, as you qualify those accounts over the years, as you establish trust and deliver actual results, your required balance will organically shift.
The cold calls will slowly be replaced by warm follow-ups.
Right.
The outbound emails will be replaced by inbound referrals. But you simply cannot skip the evolution.
So we have unpacked a massive amount of strategy here today. We've talked about the biological fear of rejection that really drives our excuses.
We expose the danger of the guru industry selling those magic pills.
Yeah. We've established why your pipeline needs to be managed exactly like a diversified 401k portfolio to survive market shocks.
And we've detailed how to actually calibrate your specific mix based on your terrain, your product, and your tenure, rather than just blindly copying a 20-year veteran.
So how do we synthesize all of this into a core philosophy for the listener to walk away with?
The author T. Harv Eker has a quote that I think perfectly crystallizes the soul of this concept.
Okay, let's hear it.
He says, "Poor people choose now. Rich people choose balance."
Wow, that hits hard. Poor people choose now. Let's break down exactly what that means in this specific context.
Choosing now means surrendering to the immediate short-term comfort of your excuses.
It's giving in.
It means looking at your phone, feeling that familiar spike of anxiety, and choosing the relief of not making the call right now.
Right?
It means choosing the quick dopamine hit of tweaking a LinkedIn profile instead of facing the actual friction of a cold email campaign. It is prioritizing your emotional comfort in the present moment over the long-term viability of your business.
It's like eating the marshmallow instead of waiting for 2 marshmallows.
Exactly. It's instant gratification via avoidance.
Yeah.
But choosing balance is the hallmark of the all-time top performers. the top 20% who consistently out-earn literally everyone else in their industry.
Because the secret of these superstars isn't that they are naturally braver than you or that they have some smoother script or a silver bullet in-band system.
No,
It is that they meticulously construct a statistically robust machine.
they engineer the luck right out of the equation.
They absolutely do. They refuse to rely on just one comfortable method, which totally insulates them from failure.
If a recession hits and inbound leads dry up overnight, they don't panic
Yeah.
because they already have the outbound muscles required to go hunt for business.
Right. If their email domain gets blacklisted by accident, they don't miss a beat because they have a deep network they can leverage.
They don't let their fear of the phone or their distaste for awkward networking events dictate their strategy.
They override their biological fears with mathematical discipline.
Beautifully said. They use a balanced approach to guarantee a constant, predictable, weatherproof flow of opportunities into their pipeline.
They choose the long-term sustainable wealth of balance over the short-term fragile comfort of now.
Exactly.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. I really want you to mentally review your own daily activities.
Take a hard look.
Think about the single prospecting channel that terrifies you the most. The one you constantly invent highly logical, sophisticated-sounding excuses to avoid.
The one where you definitively tell yourself, I'm just not good at that. Or, it doesn't work for my buyers.
Right. Identify the bicep curl you were avoiding.
Identify your leg day.
Exactly. Identify your leg day. Now ask yourself this. What if that exact channel, the very thing you are running away from right now, is the missing counterweight your portfolio desperately needs?
What a question.
What if mastering that one uncomfortable, anxiety-inducing methodology is the key to unlocking your biggest breakthrough yet?
That is where the growth happens. The friction is literally the compass pointing toward your biggest opportunity.
Now that you know how to build a balanced, bulletproof methodology that protects you from market shocks, how do you actually guarantee that this machine produces enough volume?
That's the next big hurdle.
How do you mathematically generate the pure luck needed to close impossible deals and smash your quotas? We will uncover the relentless, unforgiving math of the law of replacement in our next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.